Welcome back for class number 2 of Happiest 101. Really glad that you're here. I hope that you did the home opportunities, the reading and watching the videos, and that you're sharing that on our Facebook group with other people so that you can collaborate, ask questions, and just share some of the really interesting facts that you learn in that reading and in the videos, and of course in my presentations to you as well. So for today in class 2, we're not going to be talking so much about the things that will make you happy. We're going to be talking more about the things that might be barriers to you being happier. We're going to start off by the question, do you want to be happy? Now, I used to make the mistake of asking people that question, and a lot of times their answer was, I don't even know if I even can be happy. So the real question should be, do you want to be happier? You see, that's a very different question. So do you want to be happier? And of course, you might kick off with a resounding yes, please, I want to be happier. But do you? I'm going to be talking more in a little while about the things that might be holding you back. Let's talk a bit about what happiness is. Every book that I have read in the subject of happiness, they come to a certain point in their book where they say, okay, this is the part where I'm supposed to define what happiness is. And you start seeing them stumble all over themselves because it's actually really quite difficult to pin it down and define what happiness actually is. I've had one writer, he compared it to trying to define the weather. It's like you know what it is, and there's certain things within weather that you can define and even measure, but how do you really define weather? And so it's a similar problem with happiness. How do you define something so vague and nebulous as the word happiness? And we know it when we feel it, but we still have a really difficult time pinning it down. So what I will tell you is that, and this is very interesting, in the world of positive psychology, they don't actually like the word happy or happiness. They feel like it's very overused, and I tend to agree with them. Like if I say that I'm happy to meet you, am I truly happy? I might be, but it's a word that gets overused. And we're using it in commercials all over the place. I've challenged my students for years now to come up with a single commercial that isn't ultimately selling happiness. It might be selling the alleviation of pain, but doesn't that take you a step closer to happiness? So, if somebody's selling Preparation H, it's like, oh, well, this will help alleviate your pain and then ultimately help you to be happier. So, and I'll give you the same challenge. Can you come up with anything, any sort of advertising or commercials that isn't on some level ultimately trying to sell you happiness? So, and it is a good sell because we all want it. We all want to be happier, or at least we want to be less miserable, if you want to think of it in those terms. Back to positive psychology, they don't like the word happy or happiness because it gets so overused. What they prefer instead are the words subjective well-being. Subjective is really the key part of that because happiness is very subjective. I have one of my absolute best friends in the world. He had surgery and he is now very disabled. And he says that ultimately he is happier now that he is disabled than he was before he was disabled. So it's very subjective. On the surface, I would have thought, no, he can't possibly be happy because he's disabled, and not just in one way, but in several ways. And I would have thought, like, how could he be happy? But actually, he's a lot happier than he used to be. He might even be happier than me. I'm not really sure because it's subjective. It's only according to your own measurement of things. Also, on the other side of what happiness is not. So what happiness is not is putting on a plastic smiley face and acting like everything is just fine when it might be really, really bad, or maybe it isn't bad. Actually, that's one of the reasons that I've been teaching Happiness 101 for 16 years, is there's a lot of people that are kind of trapped in this way where they feel like they've done everything right. They got the 6 figures, they got the house in the burbs and the 2.5 kids, and all of that is supposed to make them happy according to the American formula of what is supposed to work. And that may or may not have worked for them. And so they come and they're like, hey, I've done everything that I was supposed to, and I'm still not happy. What am I supposed to do? Barbara Fredrickson, in her book Positivity, actually talks about that it can cause us harm to just be putting on this plastic smiley face and acting like everything is fine when it really isn't. I wanted to share that with you. In fact, one of my favorite parts of the class, and I didn't plan this, but it seems like every time that I teach the class over the 8 weeks, there's usually one day where I'm just feeling kind of off, and I'll come to my class and I'll confess that. I'll be like, guys, I'm just kind of off today. I'm not really feeling it, but I'm going to do my best for you and put in my best effort. But it's just really not there for me today. And I've had so many students over the years come back to me and say, you know what? Thank you so much for just being real and not trying to act like everything is fine all the time. And it gave me permission to like have an off day or not be happy all the time. People are not happy all the time. In the DSM, which is kind of the Bible for therapists, they have the diagnosis for major depressive disorder. And it says that the person is depressed or sad most of the time, most days. But even depressed people, they laugh, they joke, they have moments of happiness, but overall, it's trending toward depression. So the same thing could be said for happiness. I mean, happy people cry. I still cry. I still have moments. I still have challenges just like you do. Being happy does not mean that you're just going around smiling deliriously all the time and acting like everything is great. Be where you really are. Be where you really are. So, do you want to be happier? Yes, I'm sure that you do want to be happier, but there might be some things over on the other side of the scale that might be detracting from you to being happier. For example, because I actually will do this with my clients, I will have them on paper create a scale where on the right side, we'll have them list all the reasons that they want to, in this case, be happier. And then on the left side, we'll list out all the reasons that they might not, or they might be resistant for some reason. So one that is always on the left side of the scale is giving up the familiar, as we did with the folding the arms exercise. So it always feels a little bit weird and uncomfortable to change. And we really, really, really like our routine. We like the familiar. And so we will hold on to that. Another reason that I will find that will pop up on the left side of the scale is the person will believe that it's not even possible for them to be happier. And so if they don't believe that it's possible, then why would they even try to move forward and to actually be happier? If I don't believe I can run the mile in 2 minutes and that's the expectation, I'm not even going to come off the blocks. Why would I if I don't believe that it's even possible? Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. So if I believe that I can run the mile in 2 minutes, I'll at least try. But if I believe that I can't, then I won't even try, and then that will be my truth. So there's actually a lot of reasons why people will not try to be happier. One of the other ones is that they believe that they're not worthy of being happier, which is very, very interesting to me. That's something that we have had to address. That's one of the reasons why later in the class I discussed the very important issue of self-esteem. I found that I had to put that in there because I found that a lot of people didn't even feel like they deserved to be happy, and so they wouldn't do the exercises, and of course they wouldn't make progress. So I felt like that absolutely had to be inserted into the class. Another reason is that some people believe that being happy is selfish. You might be interested to know that in the world of positive psychology, there's two flavors, if you will, of happiness. One is called hedonic happiness, which is focused on oneself and what can I do to make myself happy. But they also have a different flavor of happiness called eudaimonic happiness. And eudaimonic happiness, I think of almost kind of like the Mother Teresa form of happiness, where you're giving and giving to other people. It's very other focused rather than self-focused. I don't really have a judgment either way about it. I think whatever flavor it is that works for you, that's the one that you should go for. But I will throw in another tidbit about happiness and selfishness, is that there was a very important study called the Framingham Heart Study. And they studied the entire town of Framingham, Massachusetts for over 30 years. And yes, they were looking for things related to the heart and the cardiac, but the study was so extensive that they were learning about people's lives and the interaction that they were having with other people. And so they were able to do a deep dive. See, this is what happens when positive psychologists get a hold of it. By the way, if you're interested, this is in a PBS special called This Emotional Life, hosted by my buddy Dan Gilbert. Well, he's not. I think of him as a buddy, but he barely. We met one time. Anyway, I love Uncle Dan. He was in the some of the videos that you were involved in. So, like, love Uncle Dan. He's great. Anyway, they did a study of Framingham, Massachusetts, and it's in that PBS special. And they found, long story short, that when one person becomes happier, it has the same pattern as a virus, and it can infect or affect up to 1,000 people. So that when you become happier, whether you're into eudaimonic happiness or hedonic happiness, when you become happier, it has the potential to affect up to 1,000 people. And if you think of it like a blast radius of happiness, if you will, then who it's going to affect or infect the most are the people that are closest to you. There might be some other reasons on the left side of the scale that might be holding you back from being happier. I wrote a few of them down. One of them is that some people believe that being happy is kind of weird and annoying to other people, which I think is very interesting. Other people, and I have had this happen in class many times, where people will be like, you're being weird, you're being different than you usually are. And I'll have my students say, do my family members not want me to be a happy person? Well, remember when we go back to the folding the arms exercise, it's one thing if you fold your own arms, it's something different if somebody else were to come up to you and fold your arms in a new way for you. So when we start becoming happier, people will be like, hey, you're moving my cheese, you're doing something different here, and that's making me feel uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that they want you to not be happy. It just means that they're feeling uncomfortable with changes that they didn't that they didn't choose. Another one is that some people have a belief that they're not going to get their needs met, so they don't want to strive toward happiness because on some very pessimistic level, and I am going to talk more about pessimism, but on some very deep level that they're just convinced that, I'm not going to get my needs met, and so I'm not even going to try because it would just be too painful for me to try to be happy, and then what if I don't get my needs met, or what if I fail? So that's another one. And kind of akin to that is the feeling of like not feeling like you deserve to feel happy, which is different than feeling like you don't believe that you can be happy. I had one lady I worked with years ago as a student, and she said that she believed that God hated her. And so if you believe that God hates you and doesn't want you to be happy, and you believe that there's this all-powerful being that's going to make sure that you're not happy, then like what's the point? Like, why even try? There's also the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you just believe that you're an unhappy person and there isn't anything that you can do about it, like that's just your destiny, then what's even the point? So I feel like you get the idea. Now, your question, of course, is, well, what if I do these scales and there's more stuff on the left side than on the right side? That's okay. Don't worry about that too much. I mean, it's a force to be reckoned with. It's an issue to be dealt with, but it doesn't mean that you're categorically doomed to be unhappy just because you're conflicted. But it is an opportunity when you lay it out in black and white for you to really start scrutinizing, like if, for example, if you did believe, well, I'm just incapable of being happy, I don't believe that I can be happy, this is an opportunity for you to take that out into the light of day, really look at it, and decide, does this belief really work for you, or is it possible that we could address that or change that? I will tell you, as a therapist, that is a lot of what therapy is right there, is taking these beliefs out into the light of day, looking at them and saying, is this true? Is this an old stale belief? Does it work for me? Can I tweak it? Can I overhaul it? Look for beliefs that you might have that might be undermining your personal happiness. We've talked about some reasons that you might be holding yourself back from happiness, kind of the why of happiness. But let's talk a little bit about how you might be holding yourself back from being happier. So the Dalai Lama wrote a book called The Art of Happiness. And in it, there's a part, the whole book could have been boiled down to these 3 sentences. But of course, he said in a very, very cool, the Dalai Lama is really cool. But basically what he said, I'm paraphrasing just a bit here, but basically what he said is, you figure out the things that make you happy and you do more of that. You figure out the things that make you unhappy and you do less of that. That is the way of happiness. So you might start taking a look at your life and what things might you be doing to actively be contributing to your unhappiness. For this, I always think of one of those really old school railroad engines. And right behind the engine, they would have the coal car. And they would put the coal car right behind the engine because they didn't want to have to walk too far when they were shoveling the coal from the coal car into the engine. And because if they stopped shoveling the coal into the engine, eventually it would slow and it would stop. So what if you stop shoveling the stuff that makes you unhappy, and just through attrition, by you not actively feeding your own unhappiness, you're going to start making some gains toward being happier. Some of the clients that I work with struggle with depression. And believe me, I know about depression. I have been depressed myself. I've been on antidepressants. Believe me, I totally get it. But I'll go through an exercise with my clients who are depressed, and I do this in a very, very gentle, compassionate way. I will ask them if they had a friend who was, I believe they call it a method actor. So a method actor is one of those actors that they're all about the role. They don't just step onto the set and start acting. They really immerse themselves into the role. And so suppose that they had a friend who was a method actor and they come to them and say, hey, I've got a role coming up in which I play a really, really, really depressed person. And I know that you've struggled with depression for a really long time. And so what could I do to get a real depression going? And of course, being a really good friend, you say, whoa, you don't want anything to do with that, believe me. But let's say that the friend is very persistent, and so you might say, well, okay, well, if this is really what you want, first of all, you should stay inside where it's dark, and you should isolate, and be sure that you play and replay every mistake you've ever made, and really get in your head and think about all your shortcomings, and give yourself a lot of really negative affirmations like I suck, I'm a loser, nobody wants to be my friend, stuff like that. Let's throw some depression, or excuse me, some alcohol in there, because alcohol is a depressant, and that will definitely help with getting a depression going. Stay away from any exercise, because exercise releases all kinds of happy chemicals, so that would also obviously be counterproductive if you're trying to actively be depressed. Watch maybe a lot of news or crime shows that shows like people just treating each other horribly. Wear dark clothes, eat crappy food, maybe you gain some weight so you feel even worse about yourself. So we'll go through the list, and then I can kind of see the look on their face as we're going through the list. And then very, very gently, I'll ask them, okay, how many of these things are you actively doing? We go through the list, and like, sure enough, the majority of the things are things that they are doing. And again, this isn't in like a finger pointing kind of way. It's more trying to help the person to see how they're actively hurting themselves, and they're shoveling that coal. And by alleviating some of that, by just accepting an invitation to go to a barbecue, or to put to put the alcohol down, or get out and take your dog for a walk and get into the sunshine. Sunshine has vitamin D in it, which will help you to ultimately be happier. Actually, that reminds me, while I'm talking about that, a couple of things to watch for to make sure that you're not being depressed medically. Two things to watch out for is low vitamin D levels, and also problems with the thyroid. Sometimes if your thyroid is out of whack, that can lead to depression as well. So we should rule out whether, if a person is depressed, and make sure that we're ruling out the medical part of it first. So I wanted to talk to you for a minute about suicide. So if you are at all feeling suicidal, please call or text 988. This will help you to get the help that you need, and hopefully help you to connect with services so that you can start seeing a therapist and start feeling better. Now, on your depression scale, the Center for Epidemiological Studies depression scale, if you were 26 or higher, that means that you're in the bracket of being severely depressed. and I would highly suggest that you seek out the help of a therapist. Even if you are feeling mildly or moderately depressed, you might consider it. Also, there's what they call passive suicidal ideation, which means that you're not actively thinking of ways to kill yourself, but you have more the attitude of like, I just wish that I wouldn't wake up today, or I wish I had never existed, stuff like that. So I want you to be happier and healthier. And if you're feeling depressed, then please do yourself some self-care and reach out and get some help. I just want to reiterate that if there's anything that you have been actively doing that has been contributing to your own unhappiness, please, please, please don't use that as a stick to beat yourself with. Just become mindful and aware of it and ask yourself, is this something that I could improve on? All right. Now that we have all of that stuff out of the way, we can start moving toward helping you to make steps toward being ultimately happier. One of those steps is I'd like you to take as part of your home opportunities for this week is to go on AuthenticHappiness.org, and if you haven't already done this, create a username and password and then go into the testing or questionnaires and take the VIA character strengths test. Now, give yourself plenty of time to take this test because it's a 240 question test. And that sounds like a lot, and yes, it is, but they're not going to be asking you to do long division. I mean, it's about as easy as asking, do you like steak or do you like chicken? Or maybe you're a vegetarian. Go ahead and take that and make sure that you write down your answers and maybe even share them on our Facebook group. But it's very important for you to know what are your personal top strengths. I'd suggest that you write down and emphasize the top 4 character strengths. And one of the things that is really cool about this is they did a multicultural study and they found that all 24 strengths are valued all over the world. So whether you're in Iceland or Guam or the United States, no matter where you are in the world, you have characteristics that people appreciate. The challenge is for you to figure out what your top 4 character strengths are, and then identify a problem that you're having, and then use one of your top strengths to solve your problem. Because a lot of times people will get stuck and they'll say, well, I can't do X, Y, or Z because I'm not this enough or I'm not that enough. Sometimes with some creativity, and if you need some help, ask somebody that you trust to maybe help you with this, shall we call it a challenge, for you to how could you apply one of your top strengths to resolve your problem. Well, that is about it for Happiest 101, class number 2. I wanted to go over some of the stuff in the home opportunities with you before we part ways for today. You can go ahead and read chapter 1 from The How of Happiness. There's a great video by Amy Mullins called The Opportunity of Adversity. I've already mentioned about taking the VIA character strengths test. And as with every week, make sure that you take your depression test, your anxiety test, and your happiness test. And then for the home opportunities for this week, we have reading on happiness activity number 3, which is avoiding overthinking and social comparison. This is something that I'm seeing a lot happening more and more with social media, the whole FOMO thing. So you might consider reading that one and then doing one of the activities that's suggested in there to help you to feel better. And then there's also a video for this week. Again, it's optional, by Brene Brown. And Brene Brown is just fantastic. I love all of her stuff. And the name of the video is called 6 Types of People that do not deserve to hear your shame story. very thought-provoking. I think you might enjoy that one. And then, as always, if you could, please go on our Facebook group page and participate there, connect with somebody there, share comments, thoughts about the videos, etc. So please stay connected, because this really is about you and ultimately helping you to feel better. Again, thank you so much for coming, and I really enjoyed our time together, and I look forward to seeing you in class 3.